Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. Going to talk about Basel 3.1, the standards for market risk as laid out by the PRA, and how FRG and SAS can help with that. I'm Ian Oglesby with FRG, and I'm joined by Ragitza, Director of Company Intelligence, and Market Risk Specialist at FRG. Welcome, Ragitza.
Thank you for having me, Ian. All of this with Basel III and its endgame is becoming a pressing matter, so I'm happy to be here.
Happy to have you. I think the best thing to do is just to jump right into some of the key challenges that we're facing. Then go through some market risk approaches that is coming from Basel, and talk about some ways to mitigate the challenges and give a demo of what it looks like. So jumping right into it, Ragitza.
Yeah, so obviously one of the biggest challenges is that the implementation time is getting shorter and shorter. There's still no final text for this, and everyone has been in kind of a holding pattern, seeing what everyone else's decisions around this is going to be, and therefore the start date, the implementation date, the date for the final text has been pushed out and pushed out and pushed out. And while we're still not there, that doesn't mean that the date that we have to be finished with the implementation has moved at all. So one thing to think about this, as always, is to act early, but do it, of course, since we don't know what the final outcome will be, do it in a manner that we're not locked into a specific way of doing it more agile, and doing it with the flexible solution. So if changes are coming, and they will be, we can adapt to those too.
So, the end date hasn't changed, but the implementation start date has changed. So the window to actually do the implementation is shrinking. And so now we have 4 years to be fully up and running. But the context here is that there's a lot more in Basel III than just market risk. So you're going to have to look through and figure out the timing for each one of those things.
Yeah, that's correct. And so one of the things that we know about this already, and that hasn't changed, is that it's going to be highly prescriptive. It's going to be very comprehensive. As you said, it's going to cover a lot of different areas. And the biggest one, obviously, being the credit risk component of this, but also market risk being substantial, and especially for a little bit bigger banks and mid-size and bigger banks, which means that given the way that the text is laid out at this point, we might want to start checking on the solutions that we already have in these areas and see if they are sufficient to follow this to the letter as it stands now, or as we're going to talk about a little bit later, if there any kind of approval that we need to be looking at getting our arguments for getting that approval in, and start thinking about how we're going to approach that.
So part of this push for a more prescriptive, more comprehensive approach is really about getting to a level of granularity that you can then assign risk weights, and making sure that the capital charge matches the risk itself. So on the one hand, the standardization is useful, but it's also a challenge if solutions don't have the granularity that they need for some of these changes.
Yes, and there's no doubt that a lot of banks are obviously already doing this kind of work, but because of the the most prevalent approach to this is to go by a standardized approach. We'll get more into that a little bit later, but that means that there is a letter that the solution has to follow. So while banks might already be doing this in some manner and using their own solutions, that is not the same as it will follow this text to the letter. So now is the time to start finding that out.
So, the fourth bullet that we have here, this is not specific, I would say, to Basel 3, but it is something that we're seeing a lot more across all areas in risk. So showing your work and giving transparency. Banks have been hit pretty hard recently in areas around ratings and ESG, climate risk scenarios, where you have a black box solution and you can actually see everything that's going on underneath. Why is showing your work and transparency, why is that still important for a more prescriptive approach? Why is that a focus here?
I think as part of the Basel 3, there is this need for transparency. We can also see that the pressure is on to move in towards a more standardized solution to exactly have that transparency and be able to compare across the whole banking sector what is being done, and it's going to make it easier for the regulators to assess that everybody is just measuring their risk in the same way. With Basel 3, there is in all areas a push to do that, simply because it's time consuming and to look at individual solutions. They're not comparable from institution to institution, and also there has been, maybe not so much in the UK, but for sure in other places, a sense that if you come up with your own solution, you do that to minimize your capital charge and not to get a fair and open assessment of your risk. They want to standardize that. So they also want to look at all the intermediate calculations. They want everyone to do it preferably in the same way.
Yeah. So this last one, these are your words, the Goldilocks issue when it comes to solutions. You want to tell me a little bit about that?
Yes. Every solution out there is obviously built to cover everything. Like if you have every kind of risk class represented, if you have every kind of instrument on your book, if you have a very diversified trading book, and any solution should be able to meet that, because otherwise it's not complete. On the other hand, that means that a full-scale solution in this area typically will be massive, and for many banks it will have a lot that is not needed, and it can be very hard to scale down. That's what I call the Goldilocks issue. Like it can be hard to find a solution. While a solution can do everything, it might also do a lot of things that you don't need. So I think it's important to find a solution that is the right size for you, or that can be scaled down and that doesn't have any kind of overhang because it has to cover everything, but more it can be scaled back and still be nimble, even if you're not using everything within it. So it has to be both upward scalable and downward scalable. And goes a little bit hand in hand with the white box, that we need to make sure that it's transparent, and we need to be sure that it's doing what it's supposed to be doing, but not necessarily more. because that's going to make it take longer and make it more complicated. We don't want that overhang.
Yeah. FRG, we have, clients that are GSIBs, huge, multinational, global banks, and then also credit unions, smaller banks, regional banks. And with the SaaS solutions, we can host them in the cloud, they can host them. And it's on a more on-demand approach, just kind of getting results. And that's a good way that we've been able to see some gains in terms of cost while still having the power behind SaaS.
Yeah, absolutely true. The minute you move into the cloud, your solution becomes scalable. SaaS is nimble in doing this, and also even more so in the cloud, even more so if you have a hosted and managed solutions, which is one of the things that we obviously specialize in.
All right, so I want to get into the functional design of the solution, some accelerators that we have, and ultimately get to the demo. But first, let's talk a little bit about the approaches are in FRTB, the Basel 3 market risk, and kind of where you think people are headed, because there's 4 approaches here. We're making it a little bit more bespoke to the actual portfolios from Basel 2.5. So yeah, tell me a little bit about what these different approaches are. And yeah, I see the advanced standardized approaches bolded. So I assume we're gonna land there.
Definitely. So yeah, to start in the middle, the advanced standardized approach is the default approach. If you do not apply for approval to fall into one of the other groups, this is what you're going to do. So we're going to spend a lot of time today talking about that. If you're a really small bank and you don't have a sizable trading book, you can, and in this context, that means that your trading book is no more than 5% of your total assets. You can apply to use the small trading book business approach, which means that you're going to be treating your trading book just for credit risk. You basically do not have to follow any of these. If you're a little bit bigger, but still not very big, you can use the simple standardized approach. I think the limit here is 10% of your trading. Your trading book should be no more than 10% of your total assets. This is a very simple approach with static weights, and should make it a little bit easier to sift through these different approaches. And then there is the full-on internal model approach, which used to be very popular with large banks because many of them already have internal models. They have a model development team. They have the resources to build these models. And in the past, having internal models have served them well. But the internal model approach is now by approval only. So you would have to apply for PRA's approval to use an internal model, and that is by desk, which means that you most likely will end up having a blend of your of different approaches. We don't know what the final text will be yet, but it has been in the original Basel text proposed that only if the internal model approach gives you a better view of your risk, but not necessarily a lower capital charge, would you be able to use it. and which effectively mean that if you are choosing to do internal model approach, you will still also need to have the capability of calculating things through the advanced standardized approach, because most likely you'll be doing that for some desk, and most likely you would also have to prove that your internal model is not giving you any advantages, and you would have to test it and prove that it is tested and performing to a much larger degree than in the past. So what we're currently seeing is that few banks are applying for the internal model approach. That is really, really for very special cases that you would do that, and everyone would go and use the advanced standardized approach to market risk.
Yeah. So it's still a decision you have to make. You get a better view of your risk with IMA, but balancing the investment both for the technology and solution to support it, as well as the team for all the tests and back testing. That's the balance you have to find, and so that's why most people are going to land on the ASA approach. We've shown kind of the three components that are going to make up the advanced standardized approach. And the sensitivities-based method is where I think a lot of the magic is going to happen. So in the next couple slides, we have kind of what the functional flow looks like, with kind of what is prescriptive, what is given, what needs to be computed and mapped and aggregated. So why don't you walk us through that?
Yeah, so this is starting in the nitty-gritty bits on the sensitivity-based method, which is the main component of the advanced standardized approach. That means that we're going to have a fixed set of risk buckets, risk classes, and the weights that we have to apply to different kinds of risk classes and risk components. And we're going to use that to take our market data and organize all of our market data into the prescribed risk factors that are completely laid out in the text as it is. We're going to use some risk factor transformations to do that. And once we have all of our risk factors laid out and defined as and capturing the kind of risk that we want and organized after risk class and risk bucket, we're also going to look at some the correlation analysis between these risk factors to figure out how much they're dependent on each other or they move in the same direction. So we're going to, from this need, we're going to need the risk factors themselves and then the correlations. That's sort of the first step. We have a template where we have all of what is prescribed, where we have all of that laid out already and ready and organized, which means that all we would need is the market data that the bank is currently using, that a client would be using, and we can map it directly into what that needs to be under the text. So that should speed up this point considerably in the beginning, the whole mapping of the market data and creating the risk factors. So once we have that, we can start creating the sensitivities. This is typically very calculation heavy part of the analysis. So this is where we take the risk factors and match them up with the portfolio or the trading book that we're looking at. We're doing that through pricing functions and again using this prescription that is in the text, which means that again, once we have the portfolio and we can completely map that to pricing functions and accelerate the work, the implementation in that manner. Then we have to derive these different sensitivities. We're looking for the delta, the vega, and the curvature, which is also sometimes called gamma. And like I said, that's very computationally heavy. Typically, that's something that we've seen before cloud computing and before parallelized systems. That would take a long time to do. That would be one of the sometimes analysis rather than one that's run over and over and over during the day. But because SAS is cloud-based for this, and because we can hold everything in memory while it's being calculated, that is should pose no restriction on how fast you can do this, and it's very standardized and parallelized. So firing on all pistons is a way of saying it. That will get us to the risk-weighted sensitivities of the system, and that's where the SAS system really shines in this component of it. And from then, it's just this determining for each risk class which correlation regime. The current text states that everything should be calculated under the regimes of the regimens of high correlation, medium correlation, and low correlation. And for each of the risk classes, we're just going to pick which one has the greatest capital charge, and then we're going to add that across the classes, and then put on the default risk charge and the residual risk add-on as well. That should get us to the final capital requirement. And this last slide is typically that's what takes up the most space in the text, and that's also what people focus on. We view it much more as just the last bit of putting the icing off the cake, because this is just straight aggregation.
So once you've aggregated up to this point, that's what brings you to the end reports. So the next thing I'd like to do is give you guys a bit of a look into what some of the SAS reports are that we have out of the box. So this is using SAS Baya, hosted in the cloud. Yeah, let's take a look. And what we see here is the result of all of those and some information about the underlying decisions that you had to make as well. So if I start here, this is the kind of the top level capital charge report with attribution. So going down to the bottom, starting at the trading desk, you can see the entire portfolio, see how much is attributed to the sensitivities-based method, or the default risk charge, or the residual risk add-on. So residual risk add-on, quite small, not featured prominently here, but there it is. So portfolio is split up by desks. You can have your desks be mapped to regions, or in this case, it's mapped to different functions of the different desks. So looking up along the top, you can filter by run date. See different runs. You can swap your reporting currencies. We have configuration sets, which is something that's really useful and important within SAS. Not quite the focus today. And then correlation scenarios. So this ties back to kind of your last step, which, as you said, is probably not the most exciting part of the flow, which is really just aggregation and matching risk weights to the instruments. But you're going to have to choose between all the different correlation scenarios. So here we have high, medium, and low. And then that's reflected over here. So you see a slight change into just the general interest rate risk. here when we're looking at a high correlation scenario. So you would think if it's highly correlated, you'd be able to better hedge your risks. Now we drop to the lower one. Again, you see a little bit of a change. So this is the way that you can view and see where those capital charges are coming from. Here have the trading desk, more focused on SMB. So this is where a bulk of your capital charges coming from. Obviously, this first desk is where most everything is. But we've also broken it down by the different risk classes. So how much is coming from interest rate risk versus currency risk and credit spread and equities. So the credit spread, for the purposes of our report today, it's rolled up. There are 3 different risk classes, but in ours, we're just looking at one. So this is your top level view. This is where you're going to look to see kind of what everything looks like across the board. And this is one of the things that's coming out of the box. Now let's look at the sensitivities themselves. So we have SAS Bank here looking at sensitivities. We have risk classes across the top. We have the desks here. So chart on the bottom is also kind of following the same thing, and you can see where your instruments are, how your instruments are going to be impacted. So you can expand the desk. Let's click on the desk here, and you can see the different instruments. So we have some basic swaps. We have some options trading as well. Probably some of your more complex trading is happening here. You can swap between the different desks. A little bit more. We have some vanilla swaps or vanilla FX options, binary FX options for. And this is an even smaller part. So looking across, looking at sensitivities across the whole portfolio along the bottom, you can see that desk 4 is carrying the most sensitivity at FX. So taking a look at this, this is kind of where not where the rubber meets the road per se, but it's where you get to see the outcome of all of those calculations that SAS is doing. And this is where you're going to build your report. So ultimately what you're giving to regulators or giving to the risk management team and kind of communicating where your trading book stands.
I just wanted to say that when we were talking about white box and transparency and being able to tie your risk and the weight it has in your capital charge all the way back to not only the instrument, but the very specific risk factor type it's coming from. This is where you have all of your drill down. This is where you have the most sleuthing rights to go all the way to the bottom of where your risk is coming from. And yeah, so this is one of the things that being able to calculate the top number and being able to slice and dice all the way down to the single source is what you get in here. And as you said, this is where all of the work gets done and where you will find what you need to report, but you will also find here that it's your ability to go all the way down to the bottom of it.
If anyone has any questions, feel free to reach out. But yeah, I think that's it for the demo today. Have a lot more to show, so we can schedule something one-on-one if you want to take a look. All right, we have some bottom line takeaways real quick before we wrap up. All right, well, that was fun to show you. It was just a little bit of what the solution has to offer, just focusing on the reports, specifically just how the sensitivities-based method rolls up and how you can drill down. There's a lot more, so we can schedule a custom demo sometime in the future. Just reach out. But just a few takeaways, about why us, why FRG, why SAS. FRG has been here before. We've been implementing risk solutions at banks for over 20 years around the world, in North America, Europe, and Asia. And SAS has been here before as well. In addition to being ranked one of the best solution providers across balance sheet risk management, behavior modeling, stress testing, IFRS 9, MRM, they're also delivering in market risk as well. So, SAS is pretty much everywhere. And FRG's experience with SAS has been around since the birth of FRG. So every risk solution that SAS has put out there, FRG has implemented. Where we're experts in risk. We can talk to you about what the regulations are going to mean for you, how those standards impact your capital charge, but also we know the technology. Not just the solutions, but the components, what kind of infrastructure is needed, how to manage it. And so, with a combination of our experience with SAS, being able to box in some of the inputs and build some reports out of the box, powered by SAS's analytics engine, and kind of built-in pricing, you're going to be set. So if you want, reach out to me. We can set up a custom demo. I can walk you through some of the other parts we didn't get to today. But yeah, that's all we have for today. Thank you, Rikitsa, for joining, and look forward to seeing everyone next time.
Thank you for having me.
Cheers.